I'm Katy Jones and I'm here to show you the next block for our Quilters Guild Red Manor House block of the month. I am a quilter and pattern designer, and I'm also the brand manager for Crafters Companion, and in partnership with the Quilters Guild we've been helping them produce these videos for support for the block of the month. So it's my turn to show you how to do the basic machine applique. So we're going to work on the cactus or the plant block today. Now what you'll find on your pattern is that each of your pattern pieces have a hard line and then a softer outside line. And because we're going to do machine applique in this example, you're going to cut out your pattern pieces on that hard line. You can also trace them onto a piece of template plastic or some freezer paper, or also some just regular cardboard from a cereal packet. Any of those works. You just want to make sure that you've got each of those shapes. Now once you've cut those out, you are going to also cut out some fabric. So we've got larger pieces of fabric because you want to lay your pattern on there and make sure that you've got plenty of room around the outside to cut that out. Okay, so I'm using a red for my flower pot, just a red spot, and then green for my leaves. And we are going to fuse the fabric, all of the individual pattern pieces, onto a background square. Now your background square in your instructions does say to cut at 6.5 inches. What I would recommend is to cut just a little bit bigger when you're doing applique, because you need just a little bit of extra room just in case you fray your edges or things kind of get a little bit messy as you're working. So I like to cut just a bit bigger. My square here is 7 inches, and because I want to know the exact centre in order to place my pieces, I'm going to trim my square down later, I simply just fold it into 4s like so and give it a good finger press, and that way I can find my centre points and I'm not moving over too far to one of the edges. It's also a good idea with applique to add a fusible stabilizer to the reverse of your fabric, of your background fabric. This just holds everything in place, and if you're using like a fancy or a decorative stitch, it means that you're not going to distort or kind of make things go a little bit bumpy or wobbly. So that holds everything in place and makes it nice and secure for your stitches. So just any kind of fusible stabilizer that is the same weight as your fabric. So I'm just using a medium weight which matches my cotton background. So we've got that. We've got our pattern pieces cut out and we've got our fabric. Now you could add different coloured leaves, you could have all of the same colour leaves. It's entirely up to you. I've gone for this kind of green, slightly patterned fabric. It's got little insects on as well, just to add a bit of interest. And I've also cut out my key block. So this image here helps me to go in the right order. So I know that I put my flower pot on last of all, because it's very easy to get a little bit confused and go in the wrong order. So it doesn't really matter so much with the leaves, but you definitely want to make sure that your flower pot goes on last. So it's a good idea to just have that as a reference next to you as you're sewing. Now the fusible web to affix your applique pieces, ready to prepare them for machine applique, you have several different options with that. With small pieces such as these, I really enjoy using just a fusible web tape rather than using the larger sheets. So you can buy it from the meter, you can buy it in packs that are smaller for kind of project sizes, or you can buy it as like a hemming tape. So it's quite a useful product anyway, if you need to hem anything, but it's also very, very handy for applique. Because what you're doing with the applique pieces is you're kind of just holding them in place. It's not a permanent fix as such. That's what your stitches do. So you can lay that over the top of your different pieces, and then mark out where your shape is. And you can either see through it, or you can use your template, your pattern piece. You can use a pencil or a pen, and then you fix that with the iron. Just like so. So as you can see, this one here isn't going to take up the whole of the shape. There's going to be little bits missing. Now that is absolutely fine, because like I said before, you're literally just kind of holding it in place, and the machine is going to do the bulk of the work. What you can also use is a spray. So there's several different types of sprays on the market. You can use them so that they are permanent, no-sew fabric bonding, or you can use them for a non-permanent. So it's a little bit like a spray mount that you would use in art or for pictures. Either of those work really, really well. You can just spray them onto the fabric and hold them, and they act a little bit like pins. You can also just use a pin, but the best way to do it, the best way for a more permanent, no slipping method, is to use a fusible web. So I'm going to just nip to the iron and iron those, and then cut my shapes out, and then we will start sewing them onto our background square. Now you can affix your different pieces one by one and then sew each one in turn, or if you prefer, you can sew all of them at once, and then just kind of go round a little bit like you're sketching it out, and you're kind of just not taking your pencil off the paper. So either way works. It's personal preference whether you want just to do like a zigzag stitch or a blanket stitch all the way around each one, or if you just want to do a straight stitch and just kind of sketch out the flowers. You can also, if you prefer, do it in a free motion way and just use your free motion foot and just really roughly sketch round, and then you can kind of do a few different lines over it. So it's literally like a pencil sketched cactus. Then once you've done that, you are going to sew your pot on. But we're going to start with this first section with the leaves, and I am using, because I'm just going to do a straight stitch, I'm just using a regular 50 weight thread. But what would look really nice would be to use the 12 weight that comes in the thread box, the Orifil thread box. And I'm going to demonstrate that a little bit later on with a hand stitch. But this also works in the machine. You just need to have a top stitch or denim needle in your machine, and it will work absolutely beautifully. So we're going to bob our needle down, and then just find a spot where you can start, and you're going to just go on the edge, zigzag, straight stitch, blanket stitch, any of your decorative edging stitches, all of those work really, really nicely. We're just going to do a straight stitch here and keep your needle in the needle down position. Set off sewing. Take it nice and slow. And just stitch round close to the edge. But because we've used a bonder web, fusible web, then everything's going to be nice and tight, and it's all going to stick really well. You can go right to the end and then back down the other side. Now when I get to the bottom here, I'm going to just have a little check and see where the most obvious and natural place to to follow on would be. And I'm going to actually jump onto my last leaf. I'm going to go across. Now this little bit at the bottom is going to be hidden under your flower pot. So you don't need to be as tidy when you move across the bottom there. Up to the end. Pivot round. And back down. Now there are also instructions for needle turn applique, which is a hand stitched method, and Jo Avery has taught us how to do that, and that is exactly the same no matter what block you're doing. It's the same method, it's the same concept behind it. So whether you're doing this cactus block or any of the other applique blocks, you can use either this machine method or also the needle turn applique method. And it's actually quite nice to try out something different. The beauty of the block of the month is that there's so many different techniques, and you can really kind of challenge yourself, particularly if you're a new quilter, or if, you know, like most of us, you find that you prefer some methods and some techniques more than others. Now I've just got to the bottom there. I'm going to cut my thread and take it out, and as you can see I've just done like a sketchy line all the way around that there, but you could do a zigzag or also the blanket stitch. All of those work really well. And next up is your flower pot. So we're going to stick that in place, but with this one, because we are doing the hand stitch, I'm not applying the fusible web or the fusible spray to this one. I'm just going to pin it in place and stitch it by hand. Now what you can also stabilize that first if you're a little bit worried about the hand stitches, because it's the herringbone stitch that's on the original quilt is quite a large stitch. It's a little bit like an elongated cross stitch. So if you prefer, you can actually just stitch that in place and then add your decorative stitch around the edges. It's entirely up to you. So I am just going to pin that in place, and then we will start preparing for our hand sewing. So I've got all my pieces in place, and I've now put my flower pot on as well and pinned it. Now Jo Avery, in her video, she recommends the use of these short applique pins, and they are fantastic. They really do save your fingers and make it a lot easier with your thread then doesn't get kind of tangled up around the larger pins. But I wanted to show that it is still possible to use a larger pin if you don't have any of the small applique pins. You can use the larger ones, but what I've done here is I've just put them in a cross in the centre so that they're not too much in the way, and then I'm just going to be mindful of my piece not shifting, because obviously it's not affixed all around the edges. And we are going to do a herringbone decorative stitch on here. It's a little bit like a kind of elongated cross stitch, and we're going to use the Aurifil 12 weight thread, which is a really nice weight of thread. It's great for decorative stitching, it's great for hand sewing, and also for top stitching. It's a nice weight. It's not too heavy, so that you can still use it on your sewing machine, but it is really enjoyable to sew with. So I've taken a 4 arms length of thread, and I'm going to work assuming that there are 2 parallel lines running along the side of my project. So we're going to use like an imaginary line and then the edge of the flower pot. So I'm going to pop my needle through, and then take a stitch up to the opposite corner like so. Then take a stitch back again, take my needle and poke it back again. And then back down to the bottom. So I'm going to do that again, up to the opposite corner, back, down, back on yourself, up and across. And this is a nice stitch that you can actually elongate quite a lot as well. Now I'm left-handed, so I do work in a clockwise position, but obviously if you are right-handed, you will be working in an anti-clockwise position. So there you go. There's a great example of how your thread can get tangled on your pins if you use a longer pin. So it is, those little short appliqué pins are really useful. And when you're doing so much appliqué as you are with this block, it is quite a good investment. So just carry on going all the way around with your herringbone stitch, or if you prefer, sew a decorative stitch on your sewing machine. But it is quite a nice one to sit and slowly stitch, and you kind of get, depending on how far apart you do your top stitches, you do get quite a nice cross effect. And just a simple cross stitch would be quite nice as well, or a hand blanket stitch, or any embroidery stitch or decorative stitch that you quite fancy trying. There's so many different ones. You could also add some different kind of vein effects to your leaves, maybe with a stem stitch or a chain stitch. It's a good one to just have a little practice and try something new. So join us next month for our next instalment of the Quilters Guild Red Manor House Block of the Month quilt.